A lot of medical students, including myself, did not have a lot of information online or from their schools on what to consider before they are going to make this huge step in their medical school journey, which is stop being an official medical student and take time away from being a student. So, this post has consolidated all the information that I can come up with, that information that would have been helpful for me, and also information from doing a survey from 17 individuals who had taken a leave of absence from their medical school journey. So, a little bit about my own experience. I took an LOA between my second and third year of medical school. So, this was right after our dedicated step one period and right before I started my third year clinical rotations. And during this experience, I had very interesting experiences, both emotionally, financially, academically. So I can't wait to speak to you all about it. And I hope it provides some information that will help you make an educated decision on your individual future. So, like I said, I will be going over a bit of my own personal experiences. I will be talking about the difference between the two different types of leaves of absences. I'll talk about why you would even consider taking a leave of absence, like financial aid or just finances in general, health insurance, disability insurance, and housing. I'll also talk about academic support that's available during this time, emotional support, and then also this topic on how to talk about in the residency applications, how to actually talk about it during your interviews. And I'll also provide some quotes from the individuals from the survey on information they wish that they would have known or someone would have told them if they were about to take a leave of absence. So, of the 17 individual anonymous students who took this survey, about 41% took a leave of absence between their second and third year of medical school, when 29% took since between their third and fourth year of medical school. Unfortunately, 53% of respondents stated they were not given information from their school on important things to consider. Therefore, this article is written to meet this highly requested need. And the first picture I have on my blog post is a pie graph that says where all the different students took their leave of absence. The next highest one is 11.8% at during their first year of medical school. I also have linked to other blog posts where I speak specifically on my own experience on an LOA. For example, the decision to extend my LOA, how one's identity can be shaped through life's traumas, struggles, and failures, financial realities of being in medical school in a lower social economic status, and addressing the red flags in my residency application. So those 4 blog posts are linked on the original blog post. Starting off, what are the different types of leaves of absences? So there are 2. One is an academic and the other is personal. For an academic one, the school usually requires or highly recommends an LOA. Usually, this is because one has failed too many courses, has to retake a year, or has to retake a board exam. Unfortunately, this is not seen as favorable by residencies. And I've been told this both by program directors and academic advisors. And 53% of the 17 students who did my survey actually stated they had to take an academic leave of absence. Now, the other type is a personal leave of absence. This can be for any reason. Usually, it is considered a choice to take a leave, and you don't have to explain to your school why you're doing it. About 35% of respondents said they just took a personal leave of absence. I have a pie graph, which it says some of them also did it for research, and then some of them did both personal and academic. Now, I'm not really sure what it is like on other schools, but for our individual school, there's a piece of paper that you must sign in order to take a leave of absence, and you actually can only check one, whether personal or academic. Now, it could be different in other schools, but those are the two options that you have. Next, reasons for taking a leave of absence. Here are some reasons students have reported taking an LOA in the survey through also individual interviews, through asking other students, and through my own individual online research and trying to figure out what is out there. First reason, studying for the USMLE STEP exam. 59% of respondents said they were doing this. Now, why? Well, because usually schools only give a certain time frame that allow you to study and take the exam. If for any reason you need more time to study, there's not really other time during school because they're under such tight restraints. So usually this is when you have to take a leave of absence, either academically or personally. Really depends on the individual circumstance. For step one exam, usually about 2 months or 8 weeks are provided for the dedicated period. And then for step two, usually between 2 and 8 weeks are available during your elective time during your 4th year of medical school. Now, there are certain schools that do take these step 1 and 2 exams after their 3rd year, or there's also medical students that do it in order, both of these exams at some point in order to graduate. So like I said, every school is different. I do want to mention that if you do have to retake an exam or a course, this can sometimes feed into that time for the dedicated. For example, I had to retake one of my course exams, not the course. I had to retake an exam. I was only given the time during my dedicated. So I took 2 weeks to study again for that exam and then take the exam, which cut into the amount of weeks I then could prepare for my step 1 exam. So in reality, I had 6 weeks for my dedicated. So that was for me in my own, I wasn't scoring well enough. And I also talk about this in depth in a blog post called How Not to Fail Step 1, where I actually go through my own individual experience trying to study for this step 1. You can look that on my website, medpsychmoss.com. Next, another reason individuals take a leave of absence is because of their personal health. Surprisingly, 41% of medical students said they did this, either because of an acute medical condition, a chronic mental health condition, an acute physical health condition, a chronic health condition, any type of disability, surgery or procedure, or just burnout. 35% of students actually put that they were burned out from going through medical school. So they just needed time to recuperate so they could do their very best. From my own experience, I took an LOA with a combination because I was experiencing an exasperation of my chronic health conditions because I was studying for my step 1 and going through so much stress on my body, on my mind, that I decided to take a personal leave of absence to address my health first so I could do the step 1 exam. But I did do the step 1 exam during my leave of absence. So it's a mix of things. Next is family obligations. 24% of respondents put that they were either spending time with their family, whether that is like parents, grandparents, or their own brothers, sisters, more nuclear family. Another reason, we're starting a family, whether that is having a child, adopting, having the infertility, starting like an IVF process or procedure. And so this all includes like becoming a caregiver for someone who's sick, which was also very common, especially during COVID, that a lot of students had to stop being medical students just to take on the caregiver role to help their family. Another reason is because there was a death in the family. Again, a lot of that happened, fortunately, a lot during COVID. Also, another family obligation could include like marriage. Next is professional reason. 12% of respondents actually stated they took an LOA because of this. I just grouped them into, this could include research, getting their master's degree, additional certificates, maybe doing their doctoral program, or just doing some special or unique opportunity in their dream job or position. I didn't take my leave of absence specifically because of these reasons. However, I did periods between studying, working, and addressing my health. I still had like extra time. So I ended up getting actually a certificate in integrative somatic trauma therapy, which was really helpful because that certificate helped me then pursue research opportunities and also get specific jobs, which would pay me more because I now had a little bit more specialized training that I could contribute to their work environment. The next one is financial. Now, surprisingly, no one specifically in those 17 students said that they took an LOA specifically of financial. However, I'll talk about this later in this podcast episode. A huge majority of students suffered significantly with their finances. So I'm going to talk about just certain reasons or certain struggles that they had during LOA that had to do with financial. For example, loss of income. So maybe their partner was working and they got laid off because of COVID, maybe, or student loans. I'll talk about that a bit later. Having to pay off credit card debt, having to pay loans, having to work to financially support their self, family, or partner, bankruptcy, paying back student loans. There are so many financial concerns that came in for a lot of students. So I'll talk about, and also my husband, we had a lot of financial trouble during this unexpected leave of absence. But again, I'll talk about that in a moment. So stay tuned. And then the last reason for someone to take a leave of absence is personal time. About 6% of respondents said that they took it because of personal time. This can include going traveling, pursuing a hobby, or just enjoying life outside of specifically school. Next, if you look on my blog post, you'll be able to see the 17 responses, and you can see specifically all the different reasons that people selected, and they were allowed to select more than one. Some things that I didn't mention is specifically the difference between step 1 and step 2. 53% selected they were doing step 1 during their leave of absence, and then 6% said they were taking step 2. Next thing I want to tell others is finances, 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 money. The thing is, when you take a leave of absence, if you take student loans, your student loans will be taken away because the government currently says you're not in school. Even if you're studying for STEP and doing academic things, you're not in the 4-year program of medical school, so they'll take your student loans away. Biggest thing to consider is where are you going to get the money to keep living, to eat, to sleep, to study, to do whatever the reason why you took the LOA in the first place. And this was actually the #1 concern, fear, and challenge that students experienced during the LOA, including myself. Funding options include personal savings, work, family support, and public financial aid programs. I will talk more specifically later. The first question I had for the individuals who did the survey is, did you know that you would have to fund the time you were on LOA? 70.6% said yes. However, 23.5% said no. And then the other percentage left blank. So I don't know what that means. Next is talking specifically about the student loans. Like I said, you can't take federal student loans while you're on your LOA. So you can look at private loans or other credit cards, things like that. However, if you do take student loans, it's important that after 6 months, you will have to pay your student loans, like pay them back, unless you extend them on another holding period. So they're held already for 6 months, but you have to specifically request and contact your loan provider. There's a specific form that your financial affairs or financial aid office can help you with. I always get the two confused. That will help you extend that so you won't have to start paying into your student loans or start paying back. 38% of respondents, that is 5 students, 5 out of the 13, who took out student loans, didn't even know that their student loans were going to be taken away. That's huge. So 17.6% said they do not take student loans, so that wasn't a consideration. 47% said they did take student loans. 47% of these medical students said they did receive outside financial support. Now, where are you getting this outside financial support? Let's see what they said. About 50% received outside financial support specifically from their parents, 16.7% from their partner or significant other, maybe if the other partner is working, and 8.3% just put generally their family. I put other options like private loans, but no one selected that. And then there's some really important statements that people put in the open section, in quotes, literally drained my savings because they expected me to continue to support myself while taking steps. And then another, I did not receive outside financial support. Okay. Next, I asked, okay, so what about a job? For me, I had to do so many jobs, and it was hard to find a job during leave of absence because I was looking for a temporary job. So if I said I was a medical school student, they would be like, wait, don't you have classes? Or when are you returning? Initially, like small jobs that I could do in the meantime. I started teaching Zumba classes, martial arts classes, going back to like my previous pre-medical school life where I was a martial arts instructor and dance instructor. So I started doing that. I started tutoring. I started reviewing pre-med applications. Some people I know started working in a research lab that they had previously before medical school, babysitting. We just tried to do everything to pay for the money that we were not receiving. Of the 17 respondents, 53% said they had to work a job. And this was because of the result of losing funding because of their student loans. And I do want to note some students even had to declare bankruptcy. So that really needs to be said of how horrible financially these medical students were and really struggled. I also talked about financial aid through the city, state, and federal programs. So when I was taking an LOA, it was still during COVID. I remember I applied for the state to help pay for a month of my rent. I can't remember if I actually got it or got parts of it, but those programs still exist. You just have to find them and apply to them. I also applied for just little grants, anything I could find, including utility support, SNAP, which is food stamps. They would just give me a little card that I could actually use at my normal grocery store, and no one knew that I was on food stamps. And it was really helpful. Like at first, I did it Amazon, and so we had groceries delivered, and the food stamps covered that. So it really helped, especially at that time. My husband and I, we had to sell one of our cars because we couldn't obviously afford to pay for the car payment, or we couldn't pay for gas and we couldn't pay for parking. So we had to go down to one car. So when my husband had to use the car, I couldn't pick up our groceries for the week. So that's why I figured out like, oh, you can deliver groceries and they accept SNAP, which was so helpful. And then later on, I started using SNAP at just, like I said, the regular grocery store. I would order them online. And then when I went to pick them up, I would just either it would be online or I just scan. They would have like a little thing that I could scan, and then we could put them in the trunk. And so that really helped, like just the shame of society of going through food stamps. And I was very thankful that a lot of food stores did still accept food stamps, and there wasn't like specific food that you had to have. I could literally do any food, pasta, milk, eggs, any of my normal stuff that I normally just get was all covered. So that was really nice. I believe at the highest point, we received $400 or $500 a month, which is our current grocery budget. So that covered our entire groceries. That was extremely helpful. And I'm very sad that currently A lot of students can't get food stamps because a lot of it was just during COVID that they extended that opportunity for students. So unfortunately, right now, I can't go back on food stamps. Also, my husband is an intern, so we make plenty of money right now as an intern resident. So we're able to afford groceries. But for students on the leave of absence, try to see if you qualify for food stamps. Some qualifications is you have to have no outside financial support. Sometimes they pull up your FAFSA, very odd, but it has to say external income 0. Another thing is food banks. This one I was so scared to do, and I had a couple friends like send them to me like, "Oh, have you considered food banks?" And I was just so embarrassed. Like I can't even explain to you how much shame and fear it was, but I think there was a time where we couldn't we literally did not have money in our food stamps account. Like we had gone through it for some reason. Maybe it was like a 5 week instead of 4 weeks. Because you only receive the food stamps on like fourth of every month. So like those first 4 days were hard. And I think it was a time that we just couldn't afford dog food. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I got dog food for free. I can't remember if I gave him cat food or just regular human food, but it was so embarrassing. But I was so glad that the people that were there, they were so friendly. They had actually even like they were doing clothes too, and they were giving out books. So I remember I pretended like I was like also looking at clothes, which I did find really cute clothes that I did get. I felt very weird about that too. But I also needed new clothes for my new job and books. That is my guilty pleasure, even though I don't have the time to read all of them, obviously. But there's something about having books. It was like a little gift to myself. Okay, going back. Last type of financial resource that I didn't use, but that is huge, is the WIC, which is WIC. I didn't have a baby on the way, so there wasn't a reason I could use it. But for other students who had babies at home or were planning on getting pregnant, this was also a great way for them to receive diapers, formula, and other resources for your family. Next, we're going to talk about health insurance. It's important to note that when you're on your LOA, you might lose your health insurance. For our school, we were provided the opportunity to continue our health insurance, but we had to physically pay for it. So, for example, mine, it cost $4,000 for my about 9 months of school that I was on my leave of absence. However, a lot of medical students had to either get back on their parents' plan if they were under 26 or go without health insurance, which is very, very scary, especially during a leave of absence where you have so much that can happen. If you're in a job, you could get hurt on the job. If just being on the LOA, it's very emotionally draining. You feel like you're alone. So health insurance is so important to be able to have that mental health and physical health support. Also, what about Medicaid? So see if you're eligible for Medicaid, especially if you aren't working on the LOA, or even if you are, if you're making less than, I think it was like 30, 40,000, you could be eligible for Medicaid. And there's so many different things. So you can apply online, and then a social worker will call you, and they can go through your entire experience of where you get money, do you own a car, when do you plan to go back to school, all these different qualifications. And if you get it, then at least for Illinois, they assign you a primary care provider. Doesn't mean you have to go to that primary care provider. You can make your own, you can go to whatever doctor you want, but it has to be someone who accepts Medicaid. So I was able to get it. It did take a couple months for it to go through. So it was definitely very scary situation, because I didn't know if I could extend my current insurance or if I had Medicaid. So there was a period that I was really scared, but I was very thankful that I was able to do both. Even when I continued my school health insurance, I couldn't afford to pay for my $30 copays, 30 or $40 copays, plus also pay for my medicine, which also is $50 to $100 a month. So all these other copays I couldn't pay for. So that's where Medicaid then stepped in and could help me cover those copays and reduce the cost of my medications and healthcare, which was huge. Okay, next thing is disability insurance. I had heard about disability insurance for when you're an attending physician, but I had no idea you could actually get it as a medical student. Now, I'm going to say I'm not an expert. I'm still trying to learn about this disability insurance because I know it's different as a medical student versus a resident. But from what I've learned to date about the disability insurance, you can actually get it and they will pay about $1,500 per month if you're on your first or second year of medical school and on LOA. And then they'll pay $2,000 per month if you're a third and fourth year on LOA. So I really wish I would have done that because that probably would have allowed me to keep studying for STEP without being stressed of paying for food, for housing, trying to figure out how getting a second and third and fourth extra small job just to pay for things. Now, interesting, I found something that said that the AAMC mandates that medical schools have disability insurance available as a benefit to students, but this really isn't advertised to students, and I struggled to find how to get this. So contact your financial affairs office, but again, I really wish it was an opportunity to use. I believe you also have to have a disability, so a health condition, mental or physical health condition that would impair us from being in school, or sorry, that impair us from working. But again, it's very confusing. And we're not sure how often people actually get paid out. So if you're a medical student that's had a disability insurance, please message me on medpsychmoss@gmail.com because I really would love to learn more. I actually put a link to Loyola Medical School in Chicago. They explained a lot of this because they actually were very transparent when their disability insurance they provide students. But I would love to find more because this would have been a huge, huge, huge help. Okay, next one, housing. Like I mentioned, where will you live? A lot of medical students have the opportunity to actually go back to their parent home or move in with a sibling or cousin or just some sort of family member because they couldn't pay for their rent, including us. There were multiple months that we went without paying rent or paid rent extremely late and got tons of fees for paying late, even though our landlord we told them of the situation that I was on leave, that we were trying to get money. They would still rack on all these late fees. So we ended up selling one of our computers, like I said, our car, a lot of our just like our clothes, a lot of our things just to be able to pay for rent and housing. So really important, and a lot of other medical students that I spoke to and also who filled out the survey also said that this was a huge struggle of trying to find and pay for housing. A lot of some students even had to travel states and pay out of a pocket to be able to travel and either put their stuff in storage while they're on LOA or paying for moving. That is expensive. My husband and I we were thinking the other day, like the first 8 years that we were together, we were moving every single 9 to 12 months to a different facility. So I know very well what it means and how much it costs to move. It's expensive. Some of the things that I recommended is check availability for affordable housing. We started the process for affordable housing, but by the time our application was looked at, it was too late, and it unfortunately ended up not being in something that we could finish doing. Like I mentioned before, there are grants for that the city provided. The school even had a little bit during that they used the money from COVID that was given, like the $1,000, and I used that to pay for housing. I do want to say that a lot of students struggled so much that they were at risk of being evicted or being late on rent payments. The next thing I'm going to talk about is academic support. So it's important to figure out before you take a leave of absence if your school will actually still allow you to have academic support during your leave of absences. Some students that I talked about weren't able to access this opportunity. Their card was deactivated. They could not access academic study spaces. They weren't able to access tutoring. Thankfully, I asked for it, so I was able to give it, but a lot of other students didn't have that same opportunity just because they didn't ask for it, which is very sad. I put a link to my blog post called The Taboos of Medical School, and I do talk about a lot of medical school resources and what does it look like to fail a quiz, test, course, and year of school. In addition, for academic support, I highly recommend you consider if you'd be eligible for disability accommodations, because a lot of things can qualify as a disability, including a mental illness, a physical illness, whether acute or chronic. So if you believe you even might have, talk to your disability or accommodations or accessibility director. They can really walk you through to see if you are eligible. And that would be able to help you keep studying, because a lot of students said they were studying for their STEP exam. So that would provide additional resources. It's important to note that you need to ask if you still need to pay out of pocket for like the STEP NBME practice exams, for outside tutoring, for your UWorld, especially since when you do your leave of absence, your time period that you did UWorld will most likely expire. So you need to see like if your school will pay for an extension or if they'll at least give you some additional financial resources. Worst they can say is no. I was very thankful that I persisted and persisted, and I did get a couple extra months on my UWorld. I also received some tutoring both at the school and also their private tutors company that they were paying for. And then I also, after requesting, I got some extra practice exams from the NBME because I took so long during my leave of absence to also study for STEP. You can read more about that on a blog post that I have links saying how to study for step 1 and not fail, because I failed and I learned a lot. And so you can learn more there. 59% of students who filled out my survey said they studied for step 1 or 2. So as you know, step is expensive. Just to take the test and do UWorld, the practice questions, it can cost $500. And then every single time you have to reschedule your exam, that can cost anywhere from $100 to $200. So important things to note. For the students who filled out my survey, 19% said that they paid out of pocket for a private tutor. 13% received tutoring through their school. Other things that were noted of the academic supports was they paid for a private course, school's learning specialist, private tutoring, and a course provided by their school. I'm going to turn this into a part 1 and part 2 since I know that it's nicer to be shorter. I'm going to talk next about the emotions, the emotional struggles of taking leave of absence, and then I'm going to go to a part 2, another podcast episode, just to talk about residency and how to talk about leave of absence of residency. So stay tuned for that. But going to emotional support. It is so important to find other students who can provide you advice or mentorship. The biggest thing that students have reported in the survey is that they felt very alone during this journey. Specifically, 60% of the respondents said they felt very alone or alone during your LOA, and I can attest to that. So it's super important to remember you're not alone. There are students, even though it is stigmatized, I really hope that we start sharing our journeys. That way we can help other students know that every journey in medicine, in education is different. So if you need to take some time off for whatever reason, it's okay. And there are people around that can support you and help you. When I started noticing that there were other medical students, one of the medical students and I created Group Me, which has about almost 30 students who were currently on the leave of absence. And that was huge because even though we didn't talk a lot or often, it was just a Group Me of people that were in our class or in our school who had previously taken LOA or were currently on LOA. It was good to know that we are not alone. And then students could put, like, we had a breakfast together. There was a student that put in a lot of their recommendations on what they did during their residency applications. It was a really good resource, and I highly recommend you to ask to see if there's something like that for your school. Some other things that I put for emotional support is, does your school or current health insurance cover therapy or counseling, like a wellness center? On my website, there is a section of mental health resources, including books, podcasts, video, and apps that are free to connect with others who also struggle from mental illness, better improve your overall mental health. Personally, I want to give a shout out to Stigma app. I actually was interviewed by them during COVID. I can't remember if it was exactly during my leave of absence. Their app is really cool because they recorded a lot of individuals just talking about their own mental health struggles and reminded people they're not alone. So it's an app where you can connect with other people that specifically have your own mental illness, and texts and videos of just all about sharing emotional support and just receiving messages of hope when you're struggling. I also put down the number for the crisis line, which you can text home to 741-741. If you feel like you're in a crisis and you really just need to talk to someone quickly, you can text or call 24/7. I highly recommend that. Again, it's home, HOME, to 741-741. Any type of emotional crisis, you have 24/7 crisis counselors. Now, also National Suicide Line. I want to share that. It's 988. It's a 24-hour confidential suicide prevention hotline for anyone in a suicidal or emotional distress that you just want to talk to someone. This saves lives. So please, please, please put it on your phone. I put it on as one of my favorites on my phone. So if I'm talking with someone or if it's myself, I can really easily access it to just get my words out and know that someone is there for you if you start to emotionally struggle, which I do want to say it is normal to have those feelings of sadness because you just went through a very traumatic experience of needing to consider a leave of absence or actually going through the trauma of taking a leave of absence. So know that you're not alone if you're emotionally struggling. Just know that there are resources out there to help. 56% of respondents responded that they did not feel emotionally supported by their school. So I do want to say it's important if you're a school administrator to see if we can provide emotional support to these students who are not officially part of the school at the moment. It is so important to help them emotionally through this time in order for them to be able to be successful and come back and finish out their education. Next is the actual choice of taking a leave of absence. The question, did you have a choice? 52.9% said no, they did not feel like they had a choice. They actually wrote, and I think they were very powerful, so I wanted to share them. Someone stated, it was my choice to take leave of absence. But I felt like I didn't have a choice because my school doesn't allow you to continue your third year unless you have taken and passed step 1. And I needed to take care of myself first before getting in optimal health and performance level to sit in for it. Another student said, they said LOA would hurt my chances to match because mine was voluntary. It was unconventional and not a red flag. I got plenty of invites from top schools. The next student put, yes, I did feel like I had a choice, but offered very little help, resources, or guidance once the leave of absence started. I'm going to skip how to talk about residency and LOA. I'm going to put that in a different podcast episode because I feel like it is another huge thing that everyone asks and is worried about. So stay tuned for that part 2. And thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I went over the blog post on medpsychmoss.com that's called What to Consider Before Taking a Leave of Absence, LOA from Medical School. So if you want any of the links for other blog posts, other mental health resources, or check out that blog post, click the share button wherever you're listening to a podcast, and send it to one other person that you believe would benefit from one of these podcast episodes. This is so important because I'm sharing a lot of stigmatized things and social taboos. And I'm doing it because I want to make sure that people feel they're not alone, because I felt I was alone while going through them. I think that it's so important to be able to combat these stigmas and break down the walls is through first talking about it and sharing my own journey. So please hit follow and share it with one other student or person that you think that would benefit from one of these podcast episodes. You can listen to this podcast episode on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and other places that you do listen to your podcasts. Follow me on social media at MedPsychMoss. I hope to see you next time. Stay tuned for part 2, talking about leave of absence and residency. Take care.